Steve, congratulations, man. So excited to have you on for the conference here. I know all of our coaches are super excited. And what timing that we get to celebrate a fourth NBA title as a coach here with you. This is just awesome.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, I'm excited to be here with you guys. And yeah, great timing coming off this championship. There's definitely a good vibe in the air in the Bay Area. So we're all feeling it.
Well, what people need to know though is this: that we invited Steve on the show like a long time ago, and we said it's contingent upon you winning the championship.
That's right.
Wrong. That's not what happened. Win or lose.
I'm a man of my word. So here I am.
But we did say we'll just wait till after the season's over. So anytime you need a playoff push, man,
That's
you just
right.
schedule with us, and we'll do this for you.
Yeah, exactly.
That part
Awesome.
is true.
Cool. Well, Jerry wants to kick it off with you here, Steve. So let's roll.
Great.
Steve, again, so happy to be with you once again. And I read a story recently, and it's probably true. It's about Bob Myers, your GM. He talks about being on a plane to Boston, and you guys got tables on a plane. You know, you all sit around tables and stuff. And he walked past a table, and Draymond was sitting there, and Steph was sitting there, and Clay was sitting there, and Bob Myers, in his sense of humor, says, "Hey, you're all funny. You're all funny. You know, you all sit together a lot. How rare is that?" And Draymond sits back and, in his tone of voice, says, "Hey, you know what? After 10 years, how many people are going to sit together after 10 years?" And then he adds, "and still like each other." Right?
That's right.
You know, and I thought that was a very heartwarming story and a way to begin this conversation, because to me, correct me if I'm wrong, but following the Warriors as I do, and your coaching and your culture, it seems to me that that's pretty emblematic. That little story is emblematic of what you guys got going there. And I'm just wondering if you could just sort of speak to that a little bit for those listeners of ours.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're lucky to have continuity with our core group of guys. It's so rare in professional sports to have, Steph, Clay, Draymond, all is between 10 and 12 years in the league. So your three core guys to be together for that long, it just doesn't happen anymore in pro sports. So we have that, which gives us our foundation. And all three guys are they're very different from one another, but they complement each other so well, both on and off the court. And they really do love being around each other. They sit at the same table. They play cards on every trip. And when Bob does go on a trip, which is not often, but occasionally he'll travel, he sits right across from them. So that was his observation. Like, wow, you guys actually really do like each other after all these years. But it's true, they do. And I think it shows on the court, just the connection that they have. It definitely matters.
Yeah, on the court is really where it shows up, because they're working together, and they're helping each other, and they're loving each other, and you can see and feel that connection for sure. John, you were gonna.
Well, I mean, how much of that, Steve, is intentional work of you and your staff, and how much of that is them being mature adults, recognizing that our success on the court also depends upon this respect off the court?
I mean, the majority of it is just that they are genuine friends. They really like each other. I think no matter who the coach was, they would still be sitting together, playing cards and enjoying each other's company. I think our job organizationally is to put as many good people around those guys as possible, and then to really try to enhance the culture that those guys, whether they know it or not, are creating with those relationships that they share with each other. So that's our job, and my job as the head coach is to really just try to put everybody in a position to connect with one another, enhance those connections, because that feeds the culture, that feeds the daily ritual, that feeds what the players feel.
I mean, you actually you nurture this, don't you?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say in a very
well. No, I mean,
way.
I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but you really do nurture it, as I can see. I mean, there are times when Clay, each one of these guys, it might be difficult to get along with, but I think as the coach, all the coaches listening to this, you're really in a great position and do a great job with this, which is to, when there might be some conflict or there might be some rough edges or something like that, you actually have to not just coach basketball, but you have to coach the emotional environment and somehow bring that along, don't you?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, we really are a small community. And so there's so much communication that goes on. There's so many great days, and there's plenty of bad days too. And you have to be able to function within all of that. And so we do that by, celebrating the individual in the context of the team's goals and the recognition. I think that's the biggest thing. The players recognize that those things go hand in hand, that their individual success leads to team success and vice versa. And when you win a championship, it's like, oh, that's really true. All the players really see it. They see that they're all getting credit, and they're all feeling this amazing glow, and their families are happy. And so it's all tied together. And as a coach, you're just trying to nurture it and feed into that. But within that, there's a lot of difficult conversations that have to be had.
Yeah. What's interesting too, just from the outsider's standpoint, reading the comments in the media, how often those three guys took responsibility and accountability when they didn't have a good game, right? Like that was the first thing, that was on me. I was awful tonight. I missed my shots. I didn't do it. I let my team down. And how different that is from a sort of low trust team where all of a sudden, well, if they just got me the ball, if my teammates played better defense, if I got the ball more often, right? It was sort of like they're all just saying, hey, I failed to give enough to my team tonight. It's not going to happen 2 games in a row. And that accountability, man, if you're a young player on your team or a young player anywhere in the world, that's the greatest lesson. Point the finger at yourself first. And then everyone around you also says, you know what? I could have done this a little bit better. And I could have done this. And the coaches say, and I could have done this a bit better. That's how you build a championship team, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt. And so that's why internal leadership is so important, and roster construction. You can't have 12 super young guys because you need the wisdom that comes with players like Steph and Draymond, who are going to hold themselves accountable. And as a coach, I try to do that often as well. We had one of our playoff games in Denver, the game we lost. We won the series in 5, but game 4, I ran an out of bounds play late in the game that I immediately regretted before the play even unfolded, because we had run the same play against Denver earlier in the season. And I knew that, but I still ran it thinking it's okay. Maybe it'll work. And they read it. They broke up the play. We lost the game. And, I went in the locker room. I said, guys, that's on me. That's my fault. I shouldn't have, and I think that's important as a coach to relay that to your players, because they're going to make mistakes. Everybody who's an athlete knows, it's impossible to be perfect. But if the players know that the coaches are going to make mistakes too, but that they own up to it, then it becomes a situation where, oh, I get it. We're all going to make mistakes, but let's try to minimize them and work through them.
Right. And if I can just jump in there, John, what's really nice is these are young athletes, people. You talked about the word wisdom. When you've been around the block a few times, like you have been, that as a coach, and I want other coaches to hear this, this is very important, that you're being vulnerable. You're accepting responsibility. You're basically telling them, I blew it. I screwed up. And when the leader says that, and all coaches listening to this, when you say that and you take responsibility and you become vulnerable, your players will more likely be willing to take responsibility because you have mentored them, coaching this emotional intelligence area of
Yeah.
life, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's right. That's
Without
right.
without pointing, without raising
Yeah.
a flag
Without,
and saying,
yeah. And when you establish that over time and it becomes part of the routine, then it gets really easy to watch a film session and say, hey, what were you doing on this play? I think
yeah,
this was the right decision.
yeah,
If you'd done
yeah,
that way, and then it's just a natural conversation. You guys know this, but Pete Carroll has made a big influence on me. Pete has, I think he calls it Tell the Truth Monday. They have their games on
I
Sunday
love it.
generally.
I love it.
And Monday is Tell the Truth Monday. And they watch the tape and they tell the truth, you made a mistake here, you made a mistake there, I made a mistake here, but you can't do that unless it's really a part of your daily ritual in communicating with the team, in building that trust. Everybody just has to feel safe and comfortable that we're all
Yeah,
just trying to do the same thing, which is to win the game. And
yeah.
when there's that comfort level and that trust, then you can work through all the other stuff.
Steve, we sat here a year ago and you were kind enough to come on then the first time Jerry and I did this conference virtually, and you're coming off to seasons in a row where you hadn't made the playoffs, and sort of number of factors, losing players, injuries, all sorts of things. And Jerry and I talk a lot about impermanence, and to obviously go from sort of the bottom back to the top this season. What I'm so curious, one of the stories you told us last year, which really stuck with me, was how when the trade deadline came around and you had the worst record in the league, people still didn't want to leave. And I think that's such an incredible story that just goes that having a great culture and having a great organization goes beyond the wins and losses. Eventually you need to win, you want to win, but athletes can see beyond it and still say, this is a good environment for me to get better, to improve. So what did you do? What do you say to your team and your players when the scoreboard isn't necessarily reflecting the work that you're putting in and things? Because you've said many times, hey, the NBA is about talent, right? And if a lot of your talent's sitting on the sideline injured, you're not going to win games. But what do you say to people to say, no, we're still getting better, and there is a light at the end of this tunnel.
Yeah.
So don't abandon it. How do you manage that? Because that's got to be the hardest thing as a coach, to come off a championship and go to the bottom.
Yeah. It's I don't think it's any one thing, one sort of magical phrase that you can use or say. I just think it's whatever the players feel every single day, and the messaging has to be authentic and honest. And I think that year, the messaging was very consistent. Like, look, we got all these guys wiped out with injury. It's not going to be an easy year, but this can be about development and improvement. And we're going to have our nights where things click, and those nights are going to be great. And we're going to have some tough nights, but we're going to keep working every single day, because our job is to help each one of you get better and improve your lives, improve your careers. And if that message is consistent, and you're able to sort of keep your values prominent within that culture all season long, where they've come in and they feel some joy and some laughter and some discipline, and whatever it is, you want your players to feel, whatever your values are. If they feel that consistently and they hear that message consistently, then they're going to enjoy the process of working, and they're going to improve, and they'll see the value in what is otherwise a losing season, that there's still a lot to be gained during that season.
Mm-hmm. And that sort of, those steps build upon then this year. I was even thinking about this. Jerry had sent me an article as we were getting ready for this that I hadn't realized. Steph and Clay and Draymond all missed at least 18 games this year. like, did that help build towards this thing of like, hey, we've done this before without these guys? That they'd only played, I think, 3 games together this year before you got to the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, hey, we peak at the right time. Everyone's back healthy together for the first time. But that 2 years of we've played without Steph or Draymond, or we played 2 years without Clay at all. Did that help get to this thing of like, we can overcome this, we can play through this, we can get to the playoffs and be a really good team? And man, if we get everyone back at the right time, we're going to be pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 years out of the playoffs were not wasted. You know, they were spent wisely. And you look at our playoff run this year, and you see the contributions of Jordan Poole and Kevon Looney and Gary Payton Jr. Those guys were all part of these last couple seasons. And even for me as a coach, we made some improvements with our staff this past year based on our struggles the last couple of years. Organizationally, we made some strides. Our training staff and our strength and conditioning group is at an all-time high right now. And so during our time, you know, where it felt like we were in the wilderness a little bit, it was about self-reflection. Where can we be better? And continued player development. And all of that came to fruition this year. And I really felt like organizationally, we've never been better than this year, top to bottom, from management to coaching to the training room to the development staff. It's, you know, it's still all about the players, but everybody organizationally, I think, was really at their peak in helping the players be at their best.
Jerry?
Yeah, I was just thinking as you're speaking, Steve, I remember reading about the father of the modern Olympic Games, Pierre de Coubertin. He once said something to the effect that the triumph isn't where it's at, it's in the struggle. And what he's referring to there, of course, is, you know, did you compete? Did you fight? Did you battle? And, you know, over that period of time, you had a lot of struggles. I bring this up because it's related to what you and John were talking about, but also I know there's a lot of people out there who's attending this conference who, bottom line is, they struggle a lot with a lot of things. Sure. Not just injury, but not just winning and losing, but time management. And they don't have the organization that you have. You know, they don't have the best of the best trainers. They don't have whatever it happens to be. I'm just wondering if, I think what could help them is maybe, you know, like what are one or two of the biggest struggles that you've had and had to face during this time? And how did you manage to get through that? Because as we all are, we're all human beings, and we all, you know, struggle.
Well, losing is no fun, you know. So, you know, going home after a loss, more often than not, I think we were 15 and 57 or something.
Yeah, 15 wins.
Right? Yeah, and
who's counting?
Yeah. Those 15 wins sure were sweet, though. I'll tell you that.
Oh boy.
Yeah. But no, the losing, you know, it definitely took its toll. It's, you know, but I think, again, you know, trying to figure out where I could be better and then doing something about it. I think I got much more detailed, you know, over the last couple of years, knowing that, okay, now we've got some younger guys, you know, I can't just count on this veteran group to go out there and perform. So I've got to be more engaged in the game personally. I've got to be standing up. I've got to be barking out more play calls. I've got to be more engaged, you know, with certain players. I mean, recognizing all that stuff and then, you know, making those corrections and then seeing them pay off is really gratifying. But the losing hurts. Losing at any level, you know, it just, you know, I think most coaches are in it because, we love to collaborate. We love to be part of a team, and we love to compete. And losing is no fun. But, there has to be a path. There has to be an awareness of, where can we be better, and where can this all
Yeah.
lead. And that's what was gratifying for us, is that these last 2 years led somewhere really positive, because we all got better.
Yeah. I don't know where I got this quote from, John. Let me just throw this out there to Steve. And that is, I've read and quoted, victory is the child of the struggle.
Yeah.
And here we are sitting here through 2 years of struggle, learning, growing, expanding, you yourself admitting that you had a lot to learn. And where did you learn that from? From setback, mistakes, errors, failures, and what have you. And then I read something like victory is the child of struggle. I mean, how sweet is that, huh?
It's great.
You
Yeah.
know?
Phil Jackson used to say, the journey is the reward. And it's true. I mean, the journey is what makes everything so special. I don't ever, pull out my championship rings and go, wow, that's a beautiful ring. But I think all the time about my memories of those seasons and conversations I had with players and coaches, moments from the journey, and those truly were the rewards, not so much the ring that's in the safe deposit box at the end.
Yeah, but you could probably, what, 9 rings, or one more and you got all fingers going.
One more, yeah.
I don't know what
more.
Phil does. He has 11 rings with 10 fingers.
Crazy. I texted Phil after because he has 11 as a coach.
Right.
And I think he won 2 as a player.
He won 2 at the Knicks back in the late 60s, early 70s.
That's right.
So he's got 2 as a player. Yeah.
He's got 13 total, but 11 as a coach, and I have 4 as a coach. So I texted Phil. He texted me after we won. Great text, and I just texted him back. I'm on your tail. Seven more championships.
Watch out. Watch out.
Yeah.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
One of the biggest struggles that Jerry and I have been hearing about, Steve, is just burnout, right, of coaches now, especially after these last 2 years. There's just the difficulty of managing your team at any level, right? You have a professional bubble. College coaches have it. High school coaches have it. And it's not just coaches. I mean, it's athletic directors, athletic trainers, support staff. It's just this intensity because of COVID that's been really tough. And someone described it as an existential exhaustion. And I thought that has just resonated in my head. How do you recharge? How do you we are so lucky to be speaking to you right after, a couple of days after your parade, but obviously you've got to be able to sort of recharge your batteries, as does your staff, as do your strength and conditioning coaches, as do your players. How important is that? And what is your advice?
No, it's huge. And it's different for everybody. It depends on your own individual life and personality, but the work-life balance is so crucial. For me, I love to play golf if I can, and I don't play it often during the season because it just takes a lot of time, but I try to get out once every few weeks during the season and play. My wife and I take our dog for a walk almost every day through the Presidio Park here in San Francisco, and there's beautiful trails all through there. So just getting outside and into nature. I love to cook. I find cooking a meal to be really therapeutic and relaxing, and so I think the work-life balance is crucial during the season, and then the more you can get away in the off season, the better, and just making sure you're not all consumed with that job, because it's not healthy to operate that way.
Yeah. Have you ever gotten to a point where you're like, man, do I need to shut it down for a year? And I'm not just saying now as a coach, but
No.
I mean, I think a lot of people are like asking themselves, is this still the career I want to pursue?
Yeah. Yeah, I've felt that way. I was GM in Phoenix for 3 years and burned out and decided to move on and went back into broadcasting. And broadcasting offers an amazing life of staying engaged but not totally engrossed. And so I did
Great.
that for a few years, and it was
Sure.
bliss. But then I
Yeah.
missed the competition, and so I've been able to kind of you know do some things that I've wanted and get in and out. It's obviously I'm lucky to be able to do that. Not everyone can have that opportunity, so I embrace it. But I'm going to keep coaching the Warriors. I love coaching this team. This will be my 9th season coming up next year.
Wow.
Um,
Where did
and
that go?
that's a long tenure in the NBA. I think that I'm the 3rd longest tenured coach in the league at this point, behind Pop and Eric Spoelstra, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah. Huh, it's crazy. Jerry, and any follows ups to that or thoughts?
No, I don't have anything to say about that, but I keep coming back to the thought, Steve, and I think you even mentioned this, like, what a highly unlikely championship, right? Of all the championships you've won, being in the finals for so many years, and this was highly unlikely. Like, no, there were people that didn't even have you guys picked to get into the playoffs.
Yeah.
To say nothing about winning it. I mean, some of
Right.
these talking heads, like, they may be middle of the pack in the Western Conference,
Right.
and Phoenix was going ballistic in February and March, and Boston was really coming together, and you guys had injuries and all that stuff, and I don't know, it just, like, coaches out there can learn something from this, because there are so many coaches, and we have some GMs out there, general managers out there of different organizations. Their teams are so in flux and fluctuating and what have you. And here you have a team that arguably is not the most athletic in the final. I mean, again, I could be wrong. They're not the biggest, and maybe not even the fastest, but yet somehow coaches out there need to learn that even though your team isn't geared for greatness, that there is greatness within that team. And I'm not sure what I'm going to say here, but other than, what kind of thoughts do you have along those lines about your team?
I just think our team was undervalued coming into the year because of the way the last 2 years went. Someone told me that the website 538, the analytics website that does both political and sports, predictions, and they had us at a 0.5% chance of winning the championship before the season started. 0.5. My first thought was, that is so disrespectful to Steph Curry. Like, Steph is one of the greatest players of all time. Surely Steph alone gives us more than a 0.5 chance. But I just think that because of our struggles the last 2 years, people look past us, and good health was everything, and what, as I mentioned before, the last 2 years, the player development, building up the young guys and getting them prepared for what was ultimately a championship run was, it was all meaningful, but it was all kind of under the radar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Most of us watching this conference are on video, but some people might just be listening to this. And as I look over your left shoulder, I can see your core values on the wall there: competitiveness and joy and mindfulness and compassion. And these are things that we've talked about since day one, and you've talked about, and they haven't really changed, because that's what matters to you. How often, I mean, obviously this is something, every time you walk into your office, you're sitting in your office now, you see that it's sort of like this reset button. Your players see it when they come meet with you. How often are these things talked about directly within your culture versus by you versus your leadership team on the team, because those things are maybe the one consistent since the day you took over the Warriors.
Yeah, I think we present them to the players probably once a year, and that's it. The idea is that that's what the players should be feeling, and that's what the experience that we're offering our players should reflect those values. And what I've found invariably is that when we are struggling as a team, we are not hitting some of those values. It's really interesting how they connect so powerfully. Um, so we go on a losing streak, we'll put our heads together as a staff and we'll realize, we need a little more joy, like the players aren't feeling any joy coming into this room. We've got to remind ourselves to lighten up a little bit and make things more fun. Or maybe our team doesn't look competitive out there, and we'll realize, we haven't been doing enough competition in practice. Players love keeping score. I think at every level, you go to a kid's basketball camp and every kid wants to play knockout.
Mm-hmm.
The number one drill at basketball camps that every camper wants to do is knockout, because it's competition and they want to knock their friend out of the game and be the last man standing. And that is so important even in our practices at the NBA level. Keep score, have shooting drills, have a winner and a loser in everything that you do. And like I said, sometimes we'll be in a bad stretch and I'll realize we haven't done any competition the last 4 or 5 days. We've lost our edge. So there's always this connection between our performance and our values. And that's a good thing, because it's a really easy barometer or measuring stick, however you want to say it, for us as coaches to kind of cross check.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, what does mindfulness mean to you in those values? Jerry and I will do a whole section of this conference on Sunday afternoon about mindfulness and the inner game. Yeah. Does that mean something different to you than it does to your players? And is it sort of you give them a buffet of options?
Buffet.
No, to me, it means the ability to lose yourself in the game, and it's never been more difficult than today in modern life to immerse yourself in a game and not worry about the judgment and the criticism and success or failure, just focusing on breathing and feeling the game and enjoying the game. How do you accomplish that? And it's not easy, and so we try to help our players with that, with a variety of things, meditation and yoga. And we have sports psychologists who come in, work individually with the players. They work collectively with the team. And it's something that's very important, but in a lot of ways very difficult to achieve because of modern life and because of the amount of judgment there is every single day for these guys.
It seems like if it's awfully difficult for me in my personal life to maintain a mindfulness approach to my day when I'm thinking about outcomes and results.
Yeah.
Like I have to nail this interview and this conversation. I have to crush it, or I'll go out and I'll have some other competitive situation with a contract and I've got to get that. And I notice it really takes me off. And I'm wondering if you find that to be true too, when we feel the pressure to win, like for instance, okay, so we're in Boston and you're down 2-1 in Boston, and it's the championship. Very similar to 2015, as I recall, down 2-1 against Cleveland, right? I remember that. And it's a must-win game, and the media is talking about, gotta win. If you don't win, you're out, one and done, And to be mindful of all those little things that you're training and how to be, how to compete, how to be selfless, how to give, how to be, and all of that. It seems to me like if you guys are focusing just on having to beat Boston, it's going to be very difficult to be mindful of the flow and the game, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And it's difficult for the players with all this media hype and coverage. and it's difficult for us as coaches for the same reason. You're being judged by your performance every single day, and I personally try to avoid media as much as I can, during the playoffs, and but inevitably I'll see something, like I made a mistake here, or I coached a poor game or what, and it's amazing, just because we're all human beings, just to feel your whole self just sort of droop, like, oh my God, I and then for me, there's always like this reminder, like, what am I doing? Like, why am I letting somebody else's opinion affect my mood? And so as a coach, I mean, what our focus is continue with all the things that we do every single day. Practice has got to be upbeat. It's got to be fun. It's got to be impactful. The communication has to be there. And so the same things that we've been doing all year continue during the finals, even in the midst of all this pressure. And if you can normalize that, so the players just feel that every day, then you get to the finals and it sort of feels like, okay, this is we know how to do this.
We've been there. We've done this. Yeah. John, you were going to say something.
I wanted to. Well, I guess I think one more point on that is really good. When you were a player, Steve, and obviously Phil Jackson was ahead of the curve in talking about meditation and the inner game. But when you were a player, seeing a sports psychologist might have been a sign of weakness. Why would you do that? What's wrong with you? And obviously that's changed, but there's still an old guard that doesn't, again, you would never go into the season and not work on your strength and conditioning and your fitness. But yet this mental part, which we know is such a huge part of it, still in many, many sports is ignored or seen as a sign of weakness. If you do that, how do you overcome that? Because I'm sure you get players that come in who have never done this type of work before. How do you convince them is not the right word, but how do you guide them towards, hey, this is just like going to the weight room. This is something this is lifting weights for your mind.
I think it's gotten a lot easier because there's been a lot of courageous athletes over the last 5 or 6 years in particular who have come out and admitted their struggles, and it's made it much more normalized. And so a lot of the young guys that we get now don't think twice about a meditation session, or seeing a sports psychologist, or when we say, hey, we're giving you access to so and so, and the team won't know anything about it, but this is somebody you can work with on any, and they're eager to do it. So I think it's more of a societal change than anything that I can say as a coach. But we're getting a lot better at that because it's becoming more accepted.
And that's worldwide too, in all sports, Steve. I see that from working with people. I mean, how many teams now are like employing a sports psychologist as part of their program? That's college, pro,
right.
Soccer, lacrosse, basketball, baseball, it doesn't matter. And so it is becoming kind of when I started out, and I don't do as much sports psychology as I used to, but when I started out 40 years ago, oh my God, that I had to sell it. I mean, I really had to sell it. I had to convince people, that, the mental part is 90% of the game, and the mind is a muscle. And if you work out your biceps, why not work out this muscle too, but today, John, I notice that people are just much more. In fact, in some environments, it's considered not a privilege isn't the word, but what's the word? It's a
prerequisite, or like you have to do it.
It's like this is one of the bennies that you're going to get.
Oh yeah.
They present it that way. Like, one of the benefits are you're going to get a chance to talk to a sports psychologist at your leisure, whenever it's necessary. So yeah, it's really changing quite a bit, for sure.
Yeah, Steve. Ron Adams has been part of the conference this year, which is fantastic to have him on. And obviously you and he have worked together for many years now. And he's talking about the role of the assistant coach, the role of support staff, and how often head coach, he just talks about that relationship and how you can be an effective assistant and how you have to praise the head coach and also, to use his terminology, which we love, cement the cracks as well, and find that balance. And one of the things he says is, a lot of head coaches out there, not you, but don't develop their assistants, don't pour into them, don't support their growth. So what are your thoughts on that for all our coaches listening who do have assistant coaches or people that work under them? How do you, because it's easy as the head coach just to do everything, but how do you hand off responsibilities and how do you let them grow as well?
I mean, I'm kind of a collaborator by nature anyway, so it's easy for me to hand over a certain section of practice to a certain coach each day. We divide our scouts. You go into an NBA game. Every game you have a scouting report that you present to the team. Some teams just have the front of the bench assistant coaches handle those. So 3 guys would handle the other 29 teams. We actually have 8 different people. Our behind the bench guys also handle scouting reports, and I think it's really healthy. I mean, we've got you get a lot of different voices who the players hear, but so they're not always hearing my voice. But I just believe in collaboration and empowering people, and so it comes pretty naturally to me to delegate and to trust people. But you got to make sure you got the right people in place, who support you, but who complement you too, and cover up, your own weaknesses.
Yeah. And how do you divvy up? Because I think sometimes as a head coach, we take on so much. And I've talked to many head coaches who talk about how important it is that the assistant not takes over, but sometimes focus on the development of this player, or, hey, my strength and conditioning coach, like, listen, I need you to create the culture in the weight room. I can't be responsible for that as well. So divvying out these responsibilities, and letting them grow as a person, but at the same time, when you disagree with them, how do you create that united front going back in front of the team? Because you sit in the office and you disagree about a scout, or you disagree about a play or a lineup. What do you say to them? Like, okay, when we go out there now, we're one.
Yeah, that's what we say in our meetings. And ultimately, as the head coach, I'm going to make the final decision on whatever our strategy is, or whatever question we have to answer. But we have a lot of healthy discussion that goes into that. But we do a retreat before every season, and that's one of the things we talk about is our process. Like, we're going to go in, and I want to hear everybody's honest opinion. If you think I'm nuts, I want you to tell me I'm nuts, and we'll hash it out. But there has to be a chemistry within the staff, just like a team needs chemistry, a coaching staff needs chemistry, and that means the ability to hash something out and then walk out of a room and be united.
Mm-hmm. Jerry, any thoughts on that? Or
no, I'd like to bring up another thought. I know we're getting kind of tough on time here, and Steve, we don't want to do this all day, although I feel I could. I just want to bring up this point. I'm kind of curious. I'm a person who believes that I'm the creator of my destiny, and I work at that. I teach that. I really believe that every day is a new day, and that if I have the right intentions, I can come pretty close to designing the day as perfectly as possible, right? With that as a backdrop, I know there's no such thing as perfection. Let's not waste our time trying to do that. But in the life of Steve Kerr, if you were to design a perfect day, get up before you get out of bed in the morning, you just say, you know, today I'm going to make it as perfect as possible. What would be the elements, you know, to show the depth and the breadth of you and your life, and how you go about doing it, and influence that as well? Fair, is that fair enough?
It is, but I'm afraid my answer isn't going to be that profound.
Well, yeah, we're looking for truth,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and what is your truth? Perfect
Yeah.
day every day.
Did I share with you guys last year my story about Roger Federer when
No.
so this was great. We were in China playing an exhibition game 3 years ago, and Roger Federer was in town for the Shanghai Masters tennis tournament. And so we heard that, and we invited him to come and visit with the team. And so he came into our locker room and talked to the team, and
Wow.
it was awesome. And our guys had really good questions. And Draymond Green asked him, "How have you stayed on top every year for so long? You're still winning, majors, 20 years in. How do you do that?" And his Roger Federer's answer was, "I love every day. I love what I do." And he described his day. He said, "I wake up, my wife and I make breakfast for our kids. I drop the kids off at school. I go to the tennis courts. I have a training regimen that I've figured out now in my later years, where I don't work myself to death, but I know exactly what I'm going to do. I love the training, so I do that for a couple of hours. I have a diet that allows me to really enjoy my life, but still perform at a high level. So I'm not on some crazy diet, but so I enjoy every meal. As I go home, I pick the kids up in the afternoon, after school, and I go home. And at night, we have dinner together. And every night I put my head on the pillow and I go, "Man, that was the perfect day."
Wow.
And then I do the same thing the next day. And it was so great because like that's it. Like that, there's the answer to your question, Jerry. What makes a perfect day is probably different for every person, but I would say my answer would sound exactly like Roger Federer's.
Yeah.
I live a pretty simple life and I enjoy it, and I can't wait. When I get out of bed, I'm excited for each day. But it's just very simple. I'm around people I love. I do what I get to do for a living, and enjoy all that. And then I love being home with my wife and family and my dog and cooking dinner. And that's all I need.
Yeah. Well, someone once said simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And yet we spend so much time of our life trying to be sophisticated in our days and make them just perfectly this and whatever. But really, when I put my head on the pillow at night, I say to Jan, and I say, you know what? It was a really, really good day. And the greatest peace I've ever known is at this moment.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
lying there together,
Yes.
no
Yeah.
tragedy, no horrendous struggle. We had a great dinner together. And like you, I'm a cook, so I love cooking. I think, John, you're a cook as well,
Yeah.
aren't you?
Yeah.
And so these little pleasures, these simple pleasures of life, there's a lot of people out there listening to this thinking, oh my God, Steve Kerr, his perfect life, boy, it must be off the charts. I'll never get there. But what we're saying to collectively is look at the simple life and the joy, right? Again, the joy of being as opposed to worrying about doing all the time.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
being the coach, being the dad, being the partner, being the dog owner, getting love from your dog as well as your wife and so
That's
forth.
right.
And I love the message, and I'm glad I asked the question because I kind of figured that was going to be the answer. And that's the sophistication that I think a lot of us miss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Simplicity. Yeah. It's that's definitely been a key component in my life. Just keeping things simple and enjoyable, and rinse and repeat.
Yeah, less but better. Last question for you, Steve. Last year we had you on here and asked for some book recommendations, and you threw out The Overstory, which I read right after that and loved it. Such a cool book. And you said your most gifted book was The Inner Game of Tennis. To people, anything to add to our reading list, something maybe you've read recently, or another book that our coaches can say, yeah, this is a good thing?
Well, the book that I read recently that I really enjoyed was a novel about the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco. And so for any of our listeners who are from the city, or if you enjoy San Francisco, this book is called Vera, like the name Vera, Vera.
Mm-hmm.
And it was fascinating because I didn't know much about the earthquake and the aftermath of the earthquake, but reading the story gives you an idea not only of what people went through during that tragedy, but the city itself and the geography of the city. So, I mean, I'm literally driving the streets every day of some of these streets that the author is talking about. And but it's a fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's sad, but it's also really moving. And but if you live in the city and if you live in San Francisco, it's a must read.
Awesome. Perfect. You always add into my reading list. I appreciate that.
All right.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Steve, thank you so much on behalf of all the coaches on here. This was a great talk. Every time we talk to you, we learn something new and we get a little bit more. And like I said, look at those values on the wall behind him, and how I think it's just so cool how secure you are. And this is what it's supposed to feel like every day here. And how important that is and how much that drives the success of the Warriors on and off the court. So thank you so much for being part of this event for us.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Steve, so much.
Visiting with you guys.
Thank you so much.